Okay, let's get started. My name is Andrea Provaglio. The title of this presentation is kind of weird, is Growing Adaptive Organizations. And I intentionally use the word growing rather than transforming, because I believe that the kind of work that we do is, as somebody mentioned this morning, is more organic than mechanical. So I like the term growing adaptive organizations. So this is a marketing part. This is what I do for a living. I'm a freelance consultant, always been, and for the last 12 years, more or less, I've been working in organizations, with organizations, to try and help them to become, as I say, part of the 21st century. Now that's the marketing part. But there's also this part, okay? I should warn you, okay? Because this guy has a tendency to talk about, number one, things that I've directly experienced. So usually the things I like to talk about, you may find in books or maybe not, because they come from my direct experience. I don't like to talk much about models, processes, and stuff like that, because you can learn those by yourself and you need to practice them. And also, because I don't really believe that there is a solution that works for everybody. So I just wanted to warn you about this thing. And the other thing I like to talk about is about things that are not really tangible, usually. And this will become more clear as we proceed. But the one thing that I've learned in my 12 years of working with companies is that the things that are most visible are also the less powerful. And the things that are most visible are the ones that you usually don't see and touch. Like, for instance, culture and mindset and habits and stuff like that. Things that you cannot really touch, but they have an impact on the organization. These are the things that I like to talk about when I'm on stage, because I just have 25 minutes and I want to give you something that I believe is powerful. So that's the way I present. Now, since we have a little bit more time than expected, we have like 8, 10, 9 minutes more because one of the speakers couldn't make it. So this talk will be 30 minutes long. But if you need, at the end of the 20 minutes, if you want to go to the other room because you want to follow the other speaker, please feel free to do so. Okay, I will not be offended. Okay, we have a deal. So quick conversation. Okay, I would like to give you 2 minutes. Find a partner if you want. Oh, by the way, if nobody wants to talk with you, it's fine. Nothing personal. Okay, they're probably just tired. They are kind of dizzy, and don't worry, nothing personal. But if you find a partner, you could try to answer this question. And the question is, what an agile organization is not. The question is not what is an agile organization. The question is what an agile organization is not. Okay? And if you want to try for 2 minutes, go for it. One minute left, 1 minute left. 10 seconds left. Thank you. I can do better. But anyway, so anything interesting? Anybody wants to shout out like a word or a short sentence? So my question again is, what an agile organization is not? Anybody? Is not flexible. Is not bureaucracy. Conservative. Not set in stone. Okay, we have a theme here. Okay. Is what? Dying. Some of them are. What else? One more? Authoritarian, okay. Yeah, the question is what an agile organization is not. And we heard that is not bureaucratic, is not authoritarian, is not flexible. Yes, we know that, yes. Is not organization where you can? Okay, you cannot ask why we are doing something, so it's basically you're not connected to the purpose of the organization. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's move on, that's fine? There's probably more, but I don't have much time. So, yes, what you pointed out is what we call non-adaptive organizations. So the usual metaphor that we use when we talk about adaptive organizations is the metaphor of the chameleon, because that's an animal that, as you can imagine, is able to adapt very quickly to the environment. Of course, it cannot transform into a butterfly, okay? But it can change color, or it can change shape to a certain extent, to camouflage, basically, or, like in this case, to become more visible for mating reasons, but I don't want to go there. So an agile organization can also be adaptive, and an adaptive organization can also be agile. But there are certain characteristics that you will recognize that are in common. So for instance, an adaptive organization is constantly scanning its environment, and in our case, the environment is the market. So an adaptive organization is constantly in touch with the customers, with the client, with the market, with the stakeholders, with the competitors, with the technology. So it's constantly scanning the environment, getting feedback so that it can decide what the next good step could be. The other thing is, decentralizing decision-making is a very good way to speed up the decision-making process, because every time a decision must be taken at this level, and then the information needs to go up 4 levels, and you lose information in the meantime, then a decision is made up here, and then it goes down 4 other levels. This decisional process is very slow and inaccurate. Okay? So by distributing decision-making in a safe way, because safety is important, you become more reactive and more easily adaptable. Adaptation is based on evidence. So you adapt because you have evidence that the decisions you had made in the past are no longer valid. Now you have that evidence, that empirical evidence, and then you change. Okay? You adapt because you see that. The other thing is collaboration. The better people can collaborate with each other, more efficient is the collaboration between people, because organizations are made of people, and the better and more efficiently these people can collaborate, the more efficiently and faster the organization can move and change and adapt. That's another characteristic. Then what we have? Yes, and of course delivering value constantly, and then experimenting and learning constantly, also about themselves. Now the thing is, most organizations today, they come from the traditional industrial mindset, meaning that the paradigm, the metaphor behind the organization is not the metaphor of a chameleon, is the metaphor of the organization is a production machine. The organization must be efficient. The organization must generate stuff that we can sell, whatever that is. Right? So that's the metaphor behind traditional organizations. And that makes perfect sense because we come from 150 years of industrial revolution. So it's very deeply ingrained in the way organizations are developed, and even the schooling system is developed. The schooling system is basically a big factory for mass producing educated people. And it's a good thing, because now we have a lot of educated people. But even schools are designed in the image of the Industrial Revolution. So you have standardized training programs. You have quality assurance. That's why you get grades and to see how much you have learned, for instance. Okay, this kind of stuff. Now the question is, how can something that has the metaphor of a machine change into an organic, adaptable thing? That's a good question. And that's a question I've been working on for many years now in my work in helping organizations. And one thing that I've learned is that, and that gives me hope, is that as human beings, not only we learn stuff, but we also learn to change the conceptual models on which we organize our interaction with the world. I'll give you an example. The background of the slide is a bit dark. It's a bit dark, but it's basically a cosmological model before we realized that the Earth is revolving around the sun and not the other way around. Okay? A few centuries ago, we believed that the Earth was the center of the universe and that the human being was the apex of creation. And then, by observing natural phenomena, we were able to infer that maybe it's different. Okay? So we changed our conceptual model. And that was a very deep and profound change, because when you start from believing that you are the apex of creation and you are the center of the universe, and then after that you realize that you are just a speck of dust in an infinite universe, that's a big conceptual difference, even philosophically and from the religious point of view. So not only we learn to adapt our conceptual models to what we learn by inferring from reality. And that's what organizations tend to do. Organizations that are learning to become adaptable are those organizations that are able to start observing the world, observing how they behave, and starting to infer that maybe there's something not exactly right, okay, in our conceptual model. At the same time, I realized in my work that organizations are very, very good at hiding many of the things that would help them to move on. It's a concept that I decided to call obfuscation. Okay? So I'll give you another metaphor. Let's assume that you're taking a walk in the mountains. Beautiful day. Okay, beautiful day, clear sky, and it's a path that you have never taken, but you have reference points here and there, you have signs and everything, so you're enjoying your walk. And then at some point, a very deep fog comes down, and you can't see anything at that point. Now, if you cannot see anything, would you still run towards the next peak or the valley or the river, or would you just be very conservative and stay still? I know what I would do. I would probably stay still. If I cannot see, I will not move, right? Especially if it is a territory which I don't know well. And that's the same for organizations. Organizations that are not able to see, they tend to stand still. They tend not to change because they will not go into an unexplored territory without having their eyes open. And so I've encountered in my work in organizations a few of these obfuscations, which I'd like to share with you, not because I want to produce some kind of emotional response to you. I mean, I don't want you to get angry or sad or irritated. That's not the point. The point is I'd like to share with you what I've learned. Okay? So the first kind of obfuscation that I've noticed is what I call segregation, which is another metaphor. So I'm talking about metaphors in this talk. What is it, segregation? Segregation is when you intentionally keep people separated. You avoid that people can mix and communicate, like political segregation. Now, in organizations, I've seen situations where a person in one department was not allowed to email another person at the same level in another department without going up the command chain. I don't know if you have ever experienced that, but trust me, that happens. Okay? You are not allowed to communicate peer-to-peer. You need to go up the command chain, which of course slows down the decision-making, makes you less adaptable. Decisions are taken with less information, and so on and so on and so on. Some organizations are used to that, and in some case, it's a good thing to do, because in some cases there are some privacy issues in some case. But most of the time, it's just keeping the power at the top, right? You want things to go to the top, at the top we decide, and then we go down. You segregate people. By segregating people, your organization is less adaptable, because people cannot cooperate in an efficient way, information does not flow, decisions are slow to take, and so on and so on and so on. Many of the things that you pointed out when I asked you what is not an Agile organization, many of these things are related to segregation. Let me give you another one, which is similar but not exactly the same. It's what I call sectarianism. It's different from segregation. It's similar because it's basically people not communicating with other people, but instead of being top-down, mandated from the top, is bottom-up. Is when people, for example, in the same line of business or with the same skills, they stick together and they start blaming or posing, making fun of other people. Like developers saying things like, those idiots in the marketing department who sell products that we have not yet developed, okay? So you have sects, okay? And you have the business people against the technical people, against the legal people, and so on and so on and so on, sects. And by the way, as Agilists, we are a sect, okay? Sometimes we believe that we are much better than others, okay? So whatever you create sects, whenever people are not able to communicate and interact, then again, your organization is less adaptable, okay? One more. This one, the third kind of obfuscation. Oh, by the way, is it clear why I call these obfuscations? Because by, for instance, with sectarianism, you obfuscate collaboration, okay? With segregation, you obfuscate the flow of information. Okay, this is why I call these obfuscations. The third one is feudalism. Now, in a feudal society, you have the king or whoever that gives land to people, so people can tender the land and then they pay taxes to the king. And in between, you have all the levels of power in between, right? Some organizations are very similar to that. But then again, what you do in this case, you create some kind of politics in the organization, and I'm sure you have seen these. Have you ever seen hidden politics in the organization? Yeah, things that happen only because one guy knows another guy, or they root for the same team, or they go and drink out and drink together. You know, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so it's not. It creates a number of hidden dynamics. I'll move on because we don't have much time. This one is called scapegoating. Okay, now scapegoating. Well, you know what a scapegoat is, right? It's the ritual of putting all the sins of humanity on a goat and then let the goat die in the desert. Okay, that's scapegoating. It's a ritual. All the religions have rituals, and this is one. In organizations, scapegoating is when you impose accountability on someone, but you don't give authority at the same time to that person. So, for instance, if you are now responsible for that project, because I'm your boss, and now you are responsible for that project, but you cannot decide anything because all decisions have been already made elsewhere. Okay, so you have responsibility without authority. You're a scapegoat because whenever something goes bad, it's your fault. If it goes well, it's my merit, right? Scapegoating, and by doing so, what you are obfuscating is real responsibility. You obfuscate where the real responsibility lies. Okay, that's another form of obfuscation. Let's move on. This one, very common, what I call backpassing. Backpassing is when you, something we mentioned here in the room, is when people are not connected to the purpose of their work. So we don't know why we do something. Okay? All we know is the task I am assigned. Okay? You have given me this task because then again, the metaphor behind this is the organization is a production machine. Okay? So I'm giving a task to you. Okay? And then you do your task, and then somebody else will do the next part of the process, and so on and so on and so on. Except that number one, we are doing intellectual work, which is not easy to manage as labor work, because you don't see what's going on. Number two, when something goes wrong, everybody will say, and they are right, well, I'm sorry, I did my part. It's not my fault, I did my part. The problem is in the overall process, which was not managed, but then there are all the other dynamics that I mentioned, like scapegoating and stuff like that. So then again, we obfuscate collaboration and responsibility and so on and so on and so on. Let me check the time. This one, oh, very simple. The image on the background is a machine. It's called the do-nothing machine. It's a very complicated machine that does nothing. It just runs, okay? It's totally pointless and it's very complicated, okay? So overcomplicating is another way of obfuscating things. Now, in our work, if you work in an Agile organization, we need to be effective, which means we need to do the right thing, but we also need to be efficient. We need to do the thing fast, okay? Or at least without too much waste. But our way as Agilists, working in a complex environment, our way of being efficient is we are efficient because we are ready to change anytime we have to. That's how we are efficient. We are efficient because we are ready to change anytime we have to. We are prepared for change because we know it will come. We know it will come. So we are ready for that. That's why, for instance, if you are a good developer, you have a good set of automating testing, for instance. Your automated tests is a way to make change in a safe way, right? Now, the problem is when something is very complicated or is overcomplicated, your reaction time is much slower because the reaction time to change will be slower. By overcomplicating, you become less adaptive, because it takes longer to make a change. And we love so much to overcomplicate bureaucratic processes, for instance. Oh, how much we love that, okay? Or we love so much to overcomplicate the tools that we use. So rather than doing something simple, we buy a very expensive tool that can do anything just in case I need that. That will also be in the tool, which means that you optimize for the 1% that you will never do, rather than for the 99% that you do every day, okay? So we overcomplicate. And that's another form of obfuscation. You obfuscate the real signal and you create a lot of noise. So your noise to signal ratio is not helping you. Let's move on. In terms of signal to noise ratio, also communication between people can be muddled by the tools that you use. Have you ever been in a situation where there was something to be decided or discussed and there was this thread of emails for 3 days? Until at some point the two guys met at the coffee machine and in 2 minutes they sorted it out? Ever happened? Yep, all the time, right? Now where is the problem there? Is that you're using a media that is a very low bandwidth. Email is a very low bandwidth media compared to face-to-face interaction, which is very rich of information. When you can communicate face-to-face, it's faster and much richer. So then again, by using the wrong tool, by the way, I'm very happy that we have emails, that we have Slack, that we have Zoom, that we have Skype. I'm very happy that we have those remote collaboration tools. Because when we need them, I'm very happy that we have them. But when we abuse them, I'm not happy anymore. When rather than telling someone, hey, you want to go for a walk and we'll discuss this thing, in 15 minutes we'll be back and fix it. We keep communicating by, even people in the next office, we keep emailing, okay? Because we keep trace of what's going on, okay? So, you know what I'm talking about. Modeling your communication is a way to create, to damage the rapport that you can build with your colleagues and slow down in communication. This one I'm not going to spend much time, number one, because I don't have much time. but it's fragmented attention. Every time your attention is fragmented because you have been given too many things to do, because you are 60% on one project and you are 30% on another project and then 20% on a third project and then 55% on a fourth project. And then also you have Slack and cell phones and emails and interruptions and colleagues coming into the room and asking for questions, whatever, your attention is very fragmented, which probably generates a sense of anxiety in you. Now, the problem with anxiety is that it prevents what we call weak signals. Weak signals from the brain are the moments in which you are creative, innovative. I'm very creative and innovative when I take a shower, for instance. That's my best time to be creative and innovative. I have good ideas when I'm taking a shower, okay? But of course, you cannot take a shower in the office, so if the office is not designed to help you detect your weak signals, because you are constantly in a state of anxiety, then of course you are preventing innovation. You are not being adaptive. Once again, that's another form of obfuscation. And the third one, the last one, is what I call postcards from the past, which means that your feedback loop are very slow. You receive information when it is either outdated or you have completely lost the cause-effect relationship because the feedback loop is too long. So for instance, if I take this gentleman here and I kick this gentleman, I will not, gently, and he kicks me back and my leg hurts, the cause-effect relationship is very simple to detect. But if I kick this guy and 1 week later my car is scratched, okay, the cause-effect relationship is much harder to detect because the feedback loop and the information is very poor, right? So shorten the feedback loops. Now, these things that I mentioned is just a summary. They form a system of obfuscations. They support each other. And the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is not because I want you to start crying and thinking on how miserable it is to work. That's not my point. As I said at the beginning, my point is not to generate an emotional response from you. My point, at least not a negative one. My point is, if you start using these metaphors as a vocabulary for bringing stuff to the surface, maybe your organization will be able to walk with its eyes wide open. Remember the fog metaphor? And by walking with your eyes wide open, you adapt faster. Okay? You can change more quickly. So, in short, what I'm saying is that in Agile, we do have a part of Agile that is all about process control. But the part of Agile that we always constantly forget is the part about organizational mirroring. In Agile, there are moments that are, let's say, strongly suggested in which we should stop and not looking at what we do, but we should look at how we work and why we work that way. We should do that from time to time. But of course, if you are in the organization is a production machine mindset, you never stop producing because you must produce, right? Well, you have to learn to stop and reflect and asking questions like, are we scapegoating anybody in this project? Interesting question. Oh, okay. How much frequently are we receiving meaningful information? Every 4 months. Maybe that's too slow. Okay. These kind of questions. So I'm hoping that these metaphors that I provided to you can help you reflect on yourself better. The one last thing, please remember, whenever you do something like this, whenever you start working with people, organization, if you really want to do that, my last and I think important recommendation is very simple, and it's this one: be kind. Be kind in what you do, because you're touching very sensible subjects and you're working with people. And one thing that we know, that another way of putting this is that the harder you push, the harder the system pushes back. So be respectful, be kind, help organizations become better places for everyone. And I'm done. Thank you very much. Thank you.